let's get started. A few words about IBREA. IBREA, as you can see, was founded several years ago by Ragnar, who you will hear momentarily, in California. We now have over 3,000 members in 17 countries, and they include real estate professionals in development, investment, title, lawyers, I apologize, brokerage, government, marketing, and technology, of course. And for those of you who noticed, we actually offer discounted tickets to today's conference to software developers, which we hope to continue in the future. And just to give you a sense of where we are, we have chapter chairs from all of those cities that have a star next to it, so I apologize for embarrassing anyone, but for those of you who are still in the room, can I please have the following people stand up and wave? From Bangkok, Dennis Nemtsov. Chicago? No. Cincinnati, James Salmon, please. Thank you. Dallas, Jerry Rising. London, James? Did James make it? James, thank you. James Dearsley. Mexico City, Carolina. Milan, Alex. New York, Anya. Phoenix, Kelly. Toronto, Graham. Vancouver, Brett. Okay, he might have stepped down. Washington, David. Okay, well, to give you a sense of where we are, we have 26 chapters around the world, and one of our initiatives going forward will be to expand chapters globally. So if any of you have a special interest in a particular country or city where we have no presence, please come forward after the speech today or after the conference, and I'd be happy to work with you. Okay, just a few words about IBREA initiatives. IBREA, as you've heard, is really meant to be a trade association. It's nonprofit. It's really meant to support and encourage the development of enterprise within the real estate and blockchain industries. Just a couple words about myself. I actually started my career as a securities attorney in London, and then came back to the States focusing on real estate, including launching my own real estate investment fund for about 5 years with a partner who's sitting here in the back. Eventually I went into blockchain primarily because my husband mentioned over dinner one night, and he happens to be a blockchain consultant, that I might want to consider going back to school. And I thought, well, after 3 degrees, I probably don't need to go back to school. Why would I ever do that? And he said, well, because thanks to blockchain, we won't need lawyers anymore. So then I started paying attention to blockchain. And at the moment, I am the chair of a new practice group at my firm called Blockchain, Technology, and Digital Currency at CKR Law. And it's been a very exciting ride. So getting back to our initiatives, we hope to work with our members and our chapter chairs to develop a universal property registry and title platform. It's challenging, but we may get there. Develop a universal digital deed platform that's open source as well. Create a how to use crypto with real estate right now resource. We've spoken a little bit about that, and we'll talk more about that later in the day, but this is something that is facing a lot of the attendants here today, and I think it would be very useful if we could kind of come up with an industry standard. Secondly, we would like to continue to build the community, whether that's through networking or meetup groups, events, online collaboration, and we really welcome your input. And finally, set industry standards. To the extent that we can, we would love to develop a best practices guide to crypto escrow in particular, which seems to be one of the biggest challenges facing the real estate blockchain industry, among other things. We'd like to identify new standards that we will try to live up to, and identify other organizations that we will partner with. And I'd like to announce for those of you who missed the news that IBREA is a top association finalist for the first annual Global PropTech Awards presented by Metaprop this week during the New York City Real Estate Tech Week. Additionally, Ragnar, as founder of Velox RE, has also made it as a finalist for the Top Founder Award. So congratulations to Ragnar and to IBREA. As I mentioned, we have some lofty goals over the next 12 months, but I think with your help we can meet them. We would, as I said, like to establish new chapters around the world, encourage more meetups. We would also, for those existing chapters, like to encourage more interaction between them, both nationally within the US and globally. We will, with your support, like to offer quarterly regional events. So that is, every quarter there will be an IBREA conference somewhere in the world, likely starting in Europe, then Asia, then Latin America, and so on. We also are in the process of actually creating a curriculum for basically a real estate blockchain 101 course. We will try to get that certified for CLE and continuing credit courses as well. We are in the process of speaking with institutions like New York University's Shack Institute for an academic partnership. We, of course, would like to engage more corporate partners. We are proposing to schedule a hackathon in December. And finally, and drum roll please, IBREA will be issuing its own token. Details will follow, but the basics are, this is meant to really incentivize and reward membership activities by the chapter chairs and give discounts on future events and so on. But I will leave it to the lawyers among us to discuss the details. As I mentioned, we are a nonprofit. We really survive based on the contributions that you make, as well as our corporate partnership. We provide corporate partners with the following services, mainly in education, consulting, startups, and helping startups in investing. You have, I mean, look around you. You have sort of the largest and the most important and innovative leaders in blockchain and real estate around you just in this room alone. So this is, to my mind, really invaluable. Here are some basics if you were interested in joining us as a corporate partner between the different levels of partnership. Certain levels of partnership give you free tickets to the conferences, your logo on our website, VIP tickets, advisory services in blockchain and real estate for a few hours a year, and recognition, of course, as a partner on our website. Now, for those of you who are new to blockchain, I thought it would be useful to just say a few words about blockchain generally and then blockchain and real estate. Blockchain is basically, as you see here, an open source universal protocol for property buying, conveyancing, recording, escrow, crowdfunding, and more. It should reduce cost, stamp out fraud, speed up transactions, increase financial privacy, internationalize markets, and make real estate a liquid asset. And since the World Economic Forum produced this handy little video, I thought they, oh, maybe not. There we go.
Modern technology allows people to communicate directly. Voice and video calls, pictures and instant messages travel directly from A to B, maintaining trust between individuals no matter how far apart they are. When it comes to money, people have to trust a third party to be able to complete a transaction. Blockchain technology is challenging the status quo in a radical way. By using math and cryptography, blockchain provides an open, decentralized database of any transaction involving value, money, goods, property, work, or even votes, creating a record whose authenticity can be verified by the entire community. The future global economy will move towards one of distributed property and trust, where anyone with access to the internet can get involved in blockchain-based transactions, and third-party trust organizations may no longer be necessary. The uses of blockchain technology are endless. Some expect that in less than 10 years it will be used to collect taxes. It will make it easier for immigrants to send money back to countries where access to financial institutions is limited. Financial fraud will be significantly reduced, as every transaction will be recorded on a public and distributed ledger, which will be accessible by anyone who has an internet connection. Think of it as wills and contracts that execute themselves, or dated proof of existence for ideas, much like a patent. Blockchain will become a global, decentralized source of trust, but not everyone is ready to embrace it. A huge proportion of trust services, from banking to notaries, will face challenges on price, volume, and in some cases, their very survival. Public authorities could find it more and more difficult to enforce traditional financial regulations due to the new possibilities offered by the Bitcoin network to bypass traditional financial intermediaries. Unimagined new networks will evolve to meet society's needs more cheaply and potentially more securely. Will governments, financial and legal institutions embrace blockchain? What will happen to the ones who don't?
There you go. I'm sure you have no other questions about blockchain. Okay. Here are a few data points about the market generally. Keep in mind, as I've noted here, this is version A because there are different sources for what the blockchain market actually is and is projected to be. But basically in 2015, the market size was valued at $509 million US. However, it's expected to reach by 2024 $7.7 billion. Now, the hottest topic of the day, the blockchain industry, is token offerings, also known as ICOs, or coin offerings. And just to give you a very brief background on this, the very first ICO, from what I understand, was in 2013 for $500,000. However, you will note what we call a hockey stick graph. Between 2013 and 2016, there was approximately $295 million being raised through ICOs. However, 2017, $2.3 billion raised so far, and we're only in October. So that means overall, since the inception of the token offering structure, $2.67 billion has been raised, including $2.37 just in 2017. Additionally, as you note on the right side, the top 10 coin offerings for this year represent 51% of the total fundraising for this year. I also wanted to put real estate in context. As you will see, it's a little hard to see, but there's a tiny little red piece of the pie called real estate, which represents 1.5% of all token offerings or startups. This is from coinschedule.com, which is very useful for those of you who are interested in following this. The highest funded ICOs by category were in infrastructure, such as Tezos, EOS, and Bancor, representing about 43.7% of all token offerings in 2017. As I said, real estate only represented 1.5%, or about $35 million raised in 2017 alone. We hope to change that. So what are the possible applications of blockchain in real estate? These are just an example. I'm sure there are plenty more, but basically the three categories are title, meaning registration of property transfers, smart contracts, which are neither smart nor contracts, but we'll discuss that later. They're basically self-enforcing agreements, in this case real estate agreements, and tokenization of real estate property ownership or financing or a host of other things. As you may be aware, we'll discuss this later today, there are actually other countries in the world that have already started implementing the registration of property on blockchain. You might have heard of the Smart City project in Dubai, Sweden, Ukraine, the Republic of Georgia, Greece, Russia, Japan, Ghana, just for a start. Now here are the 23 real estate blockchain startups this year. As you note at the warning at the bottom of the slide, this is not an endorsement by IBREA or the conference speakers, including myself, of any company, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any security, in case anyone from the SEC is listening. However, you will note one of these startups is in red font. Anyone know why that is? Warning, warning, SEC action. About a week ago, a startup in Brooklyn named RE Coin, or actually the founder of RE Coin, as well as another company in diamonds that he founded, was arrested for fraud. He claims on his website it's just a misunderstanding. I hope it is, but it's a shame that the first arrest was related to real estate. Hopefully, once you hire myself or any of the other lawyers in the room, that won't happen to you, because this guy had no lawyers on his team. Okay, a little bit about, in the time we have left, actually on the US side, what is going on with the regulators. So the main, as most of you know, the main securities regulators in the US is the SEC, And I just provided kind of a breakdown of the timeline of what the SEC has done, or its counterparts such as FINRA and the state of Delaware that we'll talk about in this space since 2013. In 2013, it issued an investor alert regarding Ponzi schemes using cryptocurrency. In 2014, it continued to issue investor alerts regarding Bitcoin and other such investments. Coincidentally, the same day that FINRA issued an investor alert, Bitcoin more than a bit risky. It continued, as you may have heard, the Winklevoss Bitcoin Trust was rejected as an ETF. And then over the last couple of months in particular, there have been several companies whose over-the-counter shares have had their trading suspended by the SEC. And of course, in July 2017, the SEC issued its most comprehensive, in effect, guide for those of us in the States on the DAO, where in effect it found that the DAO and its founders, Slockit, had been in violation of both the Securities Act and the Exchange Act. However, it chose not to enforce it against them. And actually, in this building a few weeks ago, thanks to an event hosted by Hogan Lovells, I met with someone from the SEC, who's the head of the SEC's enforcement division on virtual currency and distributed ledger, who admitted to me that it was a warning. It was the first case, and they actually didn't want to come across as quashing innovation in the US. However, there are rules, and rules have to be followed if you're in the US or offering securities in the US. Having said that, I will tell you my shocking response when I asked, well, we do have clients who are trying to be in compliance but have creative structures. Should we try to get an SEC no action letter to give us some real guidance? And she said, oh, you don't need to do that. Here's my email address. Just anonymously email us what your client's ideas are, and we'll give you our informal guidance. I mean, I've never heard of this before from the SEC. This is actually very positive. So I encourage you all to speak to your lawyers if you have a question and try and get that done. And basically, the gist of the DAO report was, in the case of the DAO, not across the board, but in the case of the DAO with those special circumstances, their token was considered an investment contract under the Howey test, and therefore a security. And because it was not registered in the US with the SEC, and neither was there an exemption from registration found, they were therefore in violation. So what this means for any of you considering token offerings, and this will be discussed later today, is please speak to your lawyers. And I don't say that lightly, because the fact that you have a lawyer is already a step in the right direction if SEC ever comes calling. But the fact is that just because you think your token is a utility token doesn't make it so. That's all I'll say on the topic for now. However, in the midst of all this, there was some good news that people seem to have forgotten about, which was in the middle in brackets in July, where the state of Delaware, as you know, the state of Delaware, notwithstanding it's a very small state, happens to be monumental for the corporate world here in the US, actually passed an amendment allowing corporations, not LLCs or LLPs, but corporations, to actually use blockchain for corporate record-keeping purposes. That sounds pretty good. I'm not sure what that means, actually. And so when as I mentioned, was at the event here, there was a fireside chat with the Secretary of State of Delaware, and I actually asked him directly after he spent about an hour patting himself in the state of Delaware on the back for only taking a year to pass this legislation, while places like Dubai are galaxies ahead of us. I asked him, okay, well, this is fascinating. What does this actually mean? And he said, what do you mean specifically? I said, well, do these amendments actually mean that now coin is basically a digital representation of an actual corporate share, or does that mean that now you can have a new class of shares, like blockchain shares, somewhere in the mix of ordinary shares or preferred shares? And he thought about it for a second and said, I don't know. So to the extent that that's useful advice, I don't know, but he said, the next sentence was, I don't know, and go ask the SEC. So I already told you what the SEC said. Basically, contact them if you have questions proactively. Don't wait until it's too late. But I think it is a very interesting move on the state of Delaware. There are other states in the US that I won't go into, but there is, on a very small level, it's encouraging, but I don't think it's as discouraging as one might think just looking at this slide of everything that's going on. The last thing to note is last week the SEC also introduced a cyber unit to target, among other things, violations involving distributed ledger technology and initial coin offerings. So, if you note, there was on August 24th the suspension of a company called First Bitcoin, but also a call made to a company called Protostar. It was a startup which had raised $47,000 in its token offering, and the response of the startup founders was, we didn't know the law applies to us. Why don't we just refund everything and be done with it? And the SEC allowed them to do that, and there were no arrests made. But if for anyone thinking, well, I'm just going to raise a couple $100,000, the SEC doesn't have the budget to really pay attention to what I'm doing, wrong, wrong, and wrong. For those of you who are curious, I actually asked Valerie, the head of the unit at the SEC that I mentioned, how many people does she actually have on her team looking into token offerings? Can I have a guess? Anyone? 5? 10? How about 80? 80. Okay, that's a lot for the SEC. I'm not saying they're exclusively dedicated to this unit, but they're involved in it. So beware. And that leads me to scams. Unfortunately, just like any other currency in the world, there are scams involving cryptocurrency. Here is just a brief summary as of August for the various types of scams, phishing, exploits, hacks, Ponzi schemes. The total amount was, what, 225 million, affecting about 30,000 people. According to EtherScamDB, there's now a whole website dedicated to monitoring crypto scams. There are currently 148 active scams. So how do you protect yourself? Here is some advice from the website I just mentioned. They prefer that you use cold storage, such as a Ledger Nano or a Trezor. Bookmark your crypto sites. Only send funds to trusted addresses. As some of you may have heard, there was another real estate startup that did a token offering outside the US recently. I won't go into details, but basically during the hours before the launch of the token offering, someone mirrored the website and copycatted it, and so unfortunately some initial investors were misdirected and bought assets of a company that does not exist. Finally, never trust any Discord, Slack, Telegram, Reddit message, especially if they say you can get free crypto, etc. Again, if you have questions, there is an 800 number for the SEC where you can actually contact them and ask them what's going on if you're concerned that you have been scammed. And a final thank you. This has been a labor of love for everyone on the IBREA team. As I mentioned, we'd love to thank Louis and his team at Hogan Lovells for hosting us and helping us to organize. The outgoing president, Nogo Golan, did an amazing job. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it today as she's just started her Stanford MBA, but she is still chair of the Silicon Valley chapter. John D. Markunis, who did an amazing job. Where are you, John? Yes, thank you for the data and the research that you did for this presentation. Our IBREA volunteers, you can wave, Freeman, Al, Bennett, Zach, and Jorge, our new intern. For those of you who are interested in corporate partnership, Leslie, please speak to Leslie. And finally, of course, we are very grateful to Smart Stop and Freeman for being our corporate sponsors and partners for today. And with that, thank you, and introduce the next speaker. Ragnar Lefroyzer is the chairman of IBREA and the founder. He's also the founder of a startup called Velox RE, which some of you may have heard is behind the pilot project in Cook County, Illinois, to register a title on blockchain. So with that, thank you very much, and I look forward to meeting all of you today.